24K today, 133 meters of climbing.
Beast mode powered by a Rose team. This is our first view of the Movistar esports team.
This is Team Swedish Zwifters here, but they might be down to 4 here.
Restart are already looking at the power here. Team draft, the men in red.
Swift Warrior Cycling.
Callas, a real mighty strong team. Legion of Los Angeles. Looks like they've actually lost Sam Bourbon, so not a great start.
Canyon, all 5 riders together, they are hitting very, very high speeds.
The Zwift Warriors coming in. The big question is, Dave, what can Canyon do here? And it's Kirkmare who have taken the win by only 3 seconds from draft. Saris in the pros closet in 3rd place, but look how closely packed these teams were.
Wild way to start week 1 of 8 here for the ZRL.
Well, it really was a spectacular opening round. Of course, it was the team time trial. Now, the results have indeed been finalised. And to check out those results, please do head to Zwift.com/Zwift Racing League, and you can pick the bones out of what was a very, very interesting opening round. And you can also look back on seasons past and what's in store for the riders this season too on that website. So, Dave, we've got 21 teams taking part tonight. 4 should I say, newly promoted teams. But out of the squads racing on this course tonight, which 3 should we really be looking out for? What teams are your picks on this course here on the Beach Island Loop?
Yeah, it's a great question, Matt, because there's a lot of individual riders sprinkled amongst all of these teams that have a shot at the outright win today. But what team is going to have that combination of riders that have the ability to pick up the bonus points? Well, and be involved in the finish. Callas comes to mind for me, that Norwegian squad. Harvard is Gelnus here is one of the top riders in the league and is certainly a strong finisher. So he'd certainly be the rider I'd look for in that top 10 when it's done and dusted. But all of these guys are, including Christian Ofdal here. This is a rider that should be picking up some key bonus points for Callas Esport Racing team out here today. So absolutely, they're going to be in the mix. The next team I'm looking at really should be no surprise. PO Auto Ceramic Speed. This is a tremendous team with depth. Now, they've not only had success at the World Championships, Michael Knudsen has been an Everest virtual world champion, but on this team today, it's going to be a Jeppe Falk. We don't have a picture of Jeppe because he's so fast that he's really just a blur, to tell you the truth. No camera is able to capture an image. But Jeppe is a wattage monster. Canyon is the final team that I would look at, and this is just based on the body of their work. I mean, not one of these guys is what I would call a wattage machine. All of them, though, when you combine them up as a group, are going to be a part of the conversation. That's been the secret to their success, Matt. These guys will all be scoring points throughout the day. Lana Viasen has been one of the most consistent riders in the league. So that's a look at the teams to watch. Again, it's going to be a wild sprint when we get down to it. I'll throw it back to you, Matt, as they're going to be out on course here in just a matter of seconds.
They certainly are. They are underway. Well, they're just rolling out. Almost perfect timing there, Dave. They're underway, and they're going to start 3 laps of this Beach Island Loop course. Of course, most of the roads here they'll be very, very familiar with, but we've never actually raced the Beach Island Loop. It is what I would call a really flowing kind of circuit, only over the 3 laps, which total 38.5k, 147 meters of elevation, but significantly, and we did see that in the women's race, and you were right, Dave. We saw a far more attritional race. Those sprint points on offer, talk us through the sprint points, because it really is kind of pivotal. We've really changed what's on offer, and it could actually change the whole style of racing, potentially even break it up. And as we saw for the women's, it made it a far harder race. So talk us through the point structure out on the race today, mate.
Yeah, well, and this is the game changer for season 3. I love the fact that Charlie Eisendorf came up with a course like this. Again, the sprinters rarely get an opportunity to be involved in a finale in the Zwift Racing League, ZRL season 3. This is their day. Now, the points that you're talking about, this is what's going to make today fantastic for the spectators out there. For the racers themselves, it's going to be brutal because scoring this 10 deep now, what we're looking at is 10 for the first rider over the line, down to 1 point for the 10th rider. It makes the likelihood of a split in this group a little bit greater. It changes every dynamic, to tell you the truth. But teams aren't going to be able, with 5 riders starting for the teams here, it's not like this is Tour de France where you have 8 riders and you can designate some guys to go in an early move and some guys to sprint at bonuses. Today, Matt, you got to have all hands on deck. There is no doubt about it. I mean, there are some names like, Gianni Kuhlmann is a rider that we haven't talked about on BZR SPSD. This guy can make 1,500 watts for about 15 seconds. That's enough to dim the power grid in all of Belgium. It's insane those kind of numbers will do out here, but he's got to be in position. There's other riders today that have that kind of a sprint. We've talked about Ingo Reichardt from the Kirkmeyer team. Jeppe Falk, who I mentioned in the opener of Pio Auto Ceramic Speed, very dangerous rider, as is Havard Jelnis. The 2, though, that I'm really expecting to have a breakthrough ride today, as we can see Ashton Lambie. It is so good to have Ashton Lambie here with us. I want to mention Brian Hodges and Thomas Thrall of Insured Pedal Power, along with Ed Veal of Draft. These are the riders that I have on my short list of sprinters. This man right here, he's held the world record in the individual pursuit. Matt, that's a blue ribbon event. The kilometer, the individual pursuit. These are the events. Literally, like the 100 meter, the 400, the 800, the 5,000. These are the events that we really, throughout all of human time on planet Earth, this is like the heavyweight world champion, right, Matt? Being the individual pursuit world record holder says that you are one of the most elite athletes. You're like a Michael Phelps category, and I'd put Ashton Lambie right there. Ashton Lambie is one of the most interesting men in bike racing today, Matt.
He certainly is. He's got an interesting look as well. I'm loving that kind of 80s vibe with the headband there, the vest as well. But as you said, very, very capable rider. And so riding at the kind of pace he is in this group now, this little bit of a kicker through the center of the volcano, kicking up to 6.5 watts a kilo, but he looks so kind of relaxed. And that ability to ride at threshold, I think is going to serve him very, very well. And I think as we're looking at Ashton Lambie there, as they emerge back out of the volcano again, it's worth just talking briefly about the brand new teams here. We saw the team time trial last week, but if you're joining us for the very, very first time, we've got 4 new teams in the Premiership of the ZRL. We've got Movistar, of course, who are got a very, very interesting roster. A couple of great signings from them. Pim van Emden, he came across from the Dutch racing team, and then Vidal Mel, who came across from Callas, alongside Miguel Andres, Daniel Guild and Jimmy Kershaw from the UK. The other 3 teams that are promoted, Movistar are a wild card as BZR Sportspot are solid. Look out for them with the blue, the navy blue and the light blue kit. Next Esports, of which of course Ashton Lambie is a member. Look out for them in that green kit. And the final new addition to this league are Beast Mode, powered by Rose. They've got a very, very strong lineup indeed, and are indeed, well, they're a team that's run by the coach of Jason Osborne, who is the men's UCI world champion. So that team, although they're newly promoted, Dave, they come with so much knowledge. And if you look back to the way the women raced, they're clearly very, very well organised, aren't they?
They certainly are, Matt. I really like Christoph Thiem on that Beast Mode presented by Rose team, and certainly a rider to watch today. There's another rider on next as we're just looking at the new teams to season 3 here coming out of the community where they really stood out. That's Brian Duffy on that next eSport team. He is a great sidekick for Ashton Lambie to have here as we're in with Miguel Angel Andres here, a Spanish rider who just went through that rigorous competition to join the Movistar team. That was really fun to watch. And they certainly sorted things out there. So out on lap number 1 right now, I think this first sprint is going to tell us a lot. I'm expecting that we'll have our introduction to BZR, another one of our new teams here for season 3, and meet Gianni for the first time. I'm expecting him to flex his muscles out here as we take a look at Ashton Lambie. What most people call their pain cave, is Ashton Lambie's patio of pleasure. This guy can go much, much deeper than your average human being, there's no doubt. If there was a rider who had a chance to make, Leonard Tugels is another rider, a Belgian that I like a lot, who's got the kind of ability to just scrape the bottom of the barrel, to tell you the truth. But Ashton Lambie is one of the few riders that could do what he's doing right now. I'm not sure why he's doing this, Matt, but it's
going long, isn't he? It's certainly is. Sorry to cut across you there, David. Just notice he has gone early, and you're talking about his kind of ability, and I'm wondering if this is a bit of a tactic. They're just heading up towards these little gravel switchbacks here. Look at the face of Lambie rocking and rolling. I think he might have gone just a little bit too early there, but he's certainly the kind of rider that's capable of going long, but he has been reabsorbed back into the bunch now. We've got about a kilometre to go before the sprint. We just head into the Italian villas, then we swing left. But very, very interesting. The approach, I think, Dave, to this sprint is absolutely crucial, because look at the way the bunch is lined out. One or two riders have actually been dropped just on that gentle rise up. So even before you get to the sprint, a lot of riders are going to be very, very uncomfortable. This is no armchair sprint here, is it?
No, not at all. Ashton Lambie just had his welcome to the ZRL moment, to tell you the truth. It's such a greater depth of ability that you see in the Premier League than he would have been seeing last season racing in the community. I mean, every one of these riders are monsters, and here we go. They're lighting this one up early. They're stringing the group out. More gaps opening up here in the field than we could imagine. And let's take a look. Is it going to be Ingo? We talked about the top sprinters, and I think Ingo might have been first over the line. Ingo Reichardt of Kirkmeyer. Bo?
Well, let's have a look. It was actually, Knudsen that just took the points there ahead of Glednius. One of your tips, Reichardt there in third for Kirkmeyer. Then Van Elst, Voets. Mario Voets, of course, a very, very talented rider. A winner of a round last season for Dutch racing there. Emmerich, Kirkmeyer, Voldegger, Koeman. Another rider mentioned by yourself, clearly very quick. And then Pedersen. So an interesting situation there. Knudsen taking a maximum points. And that will, of course, we'll have in a few moments' time what that kind of means from a team standings. And I do think just the sheer amount of points on offer, we saw it dramatically affect the outcome of the women's race. And it is, if you can go out on the offensive, Dave, score points early on, it is a kind of insurance policy. There is an investment there. It's going to clearly tire out your riders, especially the level that we've got here. But it does give you that little bit of an insurance for later in the race, doesn't it?
Well, Michael Knudsen, before the race, was telling me that he had designated by the team to go for these bonuses. This man is the Swiss Army knife of bike racers. He can climb like an angel. He sprints like a gorilla. This is a fantastic ride and a great sign for PO Auto Ceramic Speed, as they were to get a couple riders up there picking up 14 points. You can see the Kirkmeyer E-Racing. They should be very happy seeing those 12 points there. Callis Esport Racing, they came to play today with 9 points. BZR Sports Solid with 9 points. So those two teams slotting in the top three right now. Dutch Racing with 6. Beast Mode presented by Rose with 5. Well, that was very telling, Matt. To be honest with you, expect to hear more from those teams here, as they're setting a standard out here on lap number 1. The sprint line that you're looking at, that we just went past, is not the finish line for the race, as you would have noticed with the women. So we have 2 more sprints, 4 points, 10 deep coming up there before we head in. Boy, Matt, you would think with 50 points for the winner, 40 for second, 35 for third, that would be the big story. But to tell you the truth, because that is a significant change from season 2 and season 1, but really the big change is what's happening with these bonus sprints now, how deep these guys are going, and what a significant impact it's going to have on the race here.
Oh, massively. And Dave, as we look at Yoni de Broek just on the front there, the Belgian. First look at the Belgian riding for one of the newly promoted teams, BZR Sports Solid. He's looking relatively comfortable. Two little ride-ons there. Please get involved. Fire up your Zwift Companion app and give these riders a bit of a ride on, just for added encouragement. But just to go back to your point, Dave, PO Auto Ceramic Speed there, 14 points in the bag already. 2 more opportunities to score points out on the road before the all-important sprint to the finish, where there's 50 points, then 40 points, and then 35 points. There's some really big teams that have missed out. Canon Esports, not a point on the board already. Saris and the Pros Closet, no score. Legion of Los Angeles, no score. Dutch Racing, no scores. That is, to me, quite telling. I'm just wondering whether they just didn't fancy getting involved early on or are leaving it till a little bit later. But already, that's quite a big gap to try and make up, isn't it?
You know, that's a fantastic point, Matt. And I honestly think that this comes down to firepower. Some teams have it, other teams don't. Now, when you look at those points that we're talking about based on each race that we have, 50 for the win, as we were just talking about, this will come into play much, much more when you look at the races that have got more vertical gain, more climbing. Today, it's about raw wattage. What teams can get sprinters up there, position them. This is going to be the most unique day of racing that we have in the first 3 seasons of the Zwift Racing League, without any doubt. This is a fantastic, and you know, when you look at it, Matt, Canyon, who are normally, as you just said, they are normally all over these bonuses and picking up points. They don't have a sprinter really that can make much more than 1,000 watts. Other teams have got guys that can go into 12, 13, even 1,400 watts for the sprint. That's just flat out, what can you do? You are out, you're showing up at a gunfight with a knife.
I mean, when you look back over previous seasons and you look at the way, I mean, let's face it, Canyon Esports are one of the best drilled squads, but maybe they're just holding back a little bit. And we have seen them on a couple of occasions. One that springs to mind was back in New York when it was one of the first actual esports lead-outs. Whether towards the back end of the race we might see something like that. I mean, I'm just trying to think aloud, because it's very rare, thinking back through the previous rounds, thinking how many points are on offer, that there must be a reason for that. I can't see them. I just think they're holding something back, maybe to try and go on the offensive. But as you said, they've got riders that would prefer a far more attritional kind of race. It may be that they're just saving themselves to kind of bunch up, try and get as many riders in the top 10, and saving themselves from getting caught in the melee of these early sprints, which can come at a real cost, especially the run-in to that sprint, that little climb through the S's on that gravel. That's a really tough 2 or 3 Ks, isn't it?
It certainly is, Matt. But when you look at it now, so these races are almost always under an hour. It's going to be 4 massive efforts that the sprinters make. That's right in their wheelhouse. This is something that, especially for those that have raced in North America, sprinting for preems in the middle of a criterium, it's really, really similar, to tell you the truth. So these riders are going to be very well prepared. That top 10 that we looked at from sprint number 1 probably won't be significantly different when we look at sprint 2 or 3, or, to tell you the truth, even the finish here. So how do you crack the code if you're a team like Canyon or a team like Legion of LA? This is a tough day. I mean, we've talked about the fact that, you know, there are horses for courses in racing, and today's a sprint day. And if you've got a team that has a couple strong sprinters, this is your day. You better make hay when it's in the field, because next thing you know, we're going to be back in team time trial mode, where your team may struggle a little bit. So if this is your day, you want to make every opportunity you can pay off for you. So taking a look at this group, Matt, another thing that's noteworthy here is these athletes, and the percentage of difference in ability and talent is so small at this point that you don't see guys getting dropped like you would in some of the lower divisions. They can hang on. They can stay in the draft. It's just they can't participate in the sprint.
Exactly. It is very interesting, the kind of numbers, as you said, the extraordinary numbers it takes to kind of win a sprint at this elite level is quite phenomenal. And almost you think, well, because I can't compete, I'm just going to have to wait, and when the race kind of gets naturally attritional, almost for that natural kind of selection, as we look at Cybrin Velling here. Rider looking pretty comfortable. The Dutchman there sitting up just on 4 watts there. And then look at the draft saving there. The first time we've seen this on the men's race here. The draft saving is basically how much this particular rider is saving in watts, as opposed to the rider that's just sat right on the bunch, on the front of the bunch, and taking all of that wind. So the optimum place, as you well know, Dave, to sit, especially in a bigger group, is towards the back end in the middle of this group. And we've got a rider that's just chipped off. Well, Bruce Bird, the Canadian, has flown the coop again for team at draft. He's a rider that's done this before, but he's going very, very long, just coming up to the end of a lap number 1. So 12.8 Ks will have been done when he takes the line for the first time. This, of course, is our first glimpse at the approach to the finish line, but we've seen Bruce Bird do this before. But hey, this is a bold, bold move by the Canadian in the red with that big D.
Yeah, as they say in Canada, Canuck up, and that's
Big
exactly what Bird is doing. This is a very strong rider. I have a feeling, Matt, this is a one play for 10 points right now. His advantage is 4.5 seconds here. I have a feeling that he's going to pot commit here, push all the chips into the middle of the table and see if he can get those 10 points. So right now they're coming fast and furious, though, as they start setting things up. But Bruce Bird doing a really good job. He's flogging himself like a rented mule right now. Look at this effort as he's up out of the saddle. Great job by Bruce Bird here, animating the race. It takes a brave rider, Matt, to attack out of this field.
Well, I mean, these are the riders that make bike racing in real life or in a virtual world. You need riders to take a risk sometimes, to gamble. That's what, and it's riding with real panache there. But as you said, it's going to be hard to hold off the might of that group, which is moving very, very quickly. We're just moving away now from downtown Watopia. This is this nasty little drag. It just go through the kind of rock archway before we swing a right turn and head back towards the volcano. But he's holding them at 4.4 seconds. But the big question, Dave, as we well know, at what cost? Because over this little drag here, he's putting out 7.3 watts a kilo, which we know it's going to take a superhuman rider to sustain it. But you've got to doff your cap to the Canadian, because he is, week in, week out, he is unafraid and nearly caught them unawares a couple of back in season 2 into the center of the volcano. Do you remember he went with about a K to go, got caught with only 200 meters to go? But I think you're right. I think this is a long play to try and get those points, and he's having to work very, very hard indeed.
Well, win, lose, or draw, Matt, this is the kind of rider that makes racing so much fun, as he's going to give us a bit of a storyline here through the second chapter of the race today. I mean, he's all in. I mean, completely committed here. And as it goes up to 7 seconds or close to that, you start wondering, when do they fully engage in the chase, or do they write this off? Do they let the draft rider have the 10 points? Because, Matt, I don't know that I'm going to put 2 riders on the front right now to chase back one when second place is 9 points here. That's not enough to make it worth burning a match, to tell you the truth. I would let him go.
I agree. Especially, they're a team. I mean, Drotha is a very, very solid team. They wouldn't occupy this Premier Division if they weren't a solid squad. But they're a team that kind of are solid performers rather than spectacular. But I think they're going for these kind of points early on. And given the points that have been scored at the moment, Draft hadn't scored any points, so you wouldn't have thought it would affect the kind of equilibrium overall. But it is providing it a good opportunity. But the gap is starting to come down a little bit. But look at that, still pushing out 6.6 watts a kilo as the other riders just rotate and drift to the front, keep that speed kind of high. This is an amazing performance. He's only got a couple of Ks to go now. He's just rounding the back of the volcano, heading into the volcano, a place that he knows very, very well. Then they'll drop back down. And I think it might be the approach to this intermediate sprint that could be the death knell for this rider, because it's that gravel sector, as we well know, Dave, it kind of almost draws the life out of you, doesn't it? It's almost like riding through treacle up that little drag.
We were comparing it to riding through wet carpet the other week, and it definitely, you just feel all of the energy getting sucked out of your legs, and you just feel like it's not turning into forward momentum, that's for sure. Well, here we go. At this point, Bruce Bird has got to feel like he's passing a kidney stone, because it's going to take an incredible amount of pain to hold off the field from here on in. The gap is down to 2.5 seconds. This is what's so exciting about adding value to these bonus sprints. I think they're going to catch him. As you can see now, the inevitability of the physics of that is a tremendously strong group bearing down on Bruce Bird. But Bruce Bird, I salute you. Thanks for making that fun to watch there out here on the second lap. But let's hit the reset button. We've got some points to score here, as these guys are going to start galloping here for our second bonus sprint. Again, scoring this one 10 deep, from 10 points for the winner down to 1 point for the 10th rider across the line. We'll add that to the first sprint we've had and see where things stand here at the middle part of the race.
Indeed. Well, the team that scored the most points so far, as we well know, as a team that we didn't necessarily expect that would do that, but we'll get did that. The team PO Auto Ceramic Speed. Remember, they got 14 points. They scored very, very highly indeed. It's all about getting numbers up there, and it will be very interesting. Could actually turn this race on its head if they score something similar again, because then that big gap in points will really start to open up, forcing the other teams to try And I'm just wondering if some of the teams that rested on lap number 1 are going to have to get stuck in the mix here, because if the teams start scoring too many points, it makes it increasingly more difficult as we head towards the finish. But we have got another rider just chipped off the front there, Ryan Rudderman, another Canadian. Maple Leaf just drifting off the front there from Next Esports. I think he's just been brought back into the fold. This is where we start, the road just starts to rise a little bit. Just heading through out of the volcano, and then we start picking up again on this gravel section here. But Zwan now on the front, Michela Andres there also on the front as well, as we look at the Welshman, Joe Rees, inside his, well, it's not really, it is a pain cave, but it looks like that's his extension in the back garden, but nice and ventilated, which is what you need at these sorts of speeds, Dave.
A pain greenhouse sounds very luxurious in this day and age, I must say. Well, look how much reshuffling they're doing on the front here, Matt. As it's starting, you can see the spearhead shape of the peloton now tells us that this is full gas at this point. It's incredibly hard. As a matter of fact, as you look, Matt, see how few riders are moving up right now? It takes a superhuman effort to do that. So Felix Schwebe, the German rider, up on the front. Ryan Rudderham has done a great job of holding position up there. There's Jaden Yeager, another workhorse of a rider out of Wisconsin here in the United States that looks like he wants to contest. I'm seeing a lot of new names, to tell you the truth, up on the front of the group, but I expect they're going to be swarming here as we come up on this second bonus sprint.
Yep, just approaching that little bit of a rise. You can just see the top right-hand side of your screen. As the percentage starts to rise, you will see the watts per kilo start to rise as well. I'm expecting maybe a few to nudge into the red, and there it is, Reichardt with 8.2. West there, Alex West, the rider from Canyon. Remember, Canyon Esports didn't score any points on that first intermediate. The dust is being kicked up here on these little switchbacks, still continues to rise at 3%. A lot of these riders now, with the sprint coming up in only around 1300 meters, are going to be already put in the red. But it's Offendal now on the front. Mike Cumming there, moving to the front there for Saris on the pros closet. And it is Lionel Vujasan on the front there as we head just through the Italian villas. Then we will swing left, and we've got about 800 meters to go to the sprint here, and it's bunching up a little bit. Nobody willing to take this up now, Dave.
I'll tell you what, Michael Knudsen here as PO Auto Ceramic Speed, they might be the one team that's got the luxury of being able to have role players out here today, as Jeppe Falk, PO Auto Ceramic Speed rider, has been able to lay back a little bit. You could see now, all right, throttle completely open up. We are locked and loaded. Sprint 2 has engaged. It looks like Lee. There's Stefan Kirkmeyer making a run at it. Let's see how this scores. There's the group of 10 over the line. Was it? Well, let's go ahead and let the points settle here. It's going to be interesting. It is a bunch of new names. There you go, Matt.
It is indeed. Well, Warner took the points there ahead of Vidar Mel. Of course, Vidar Mel now riding for Movistar. Emmerich is there, Tim Glednes, of course, Kirkmeyer from the Kirkmeyer team, Pedersen and Knudsen, and then Van Alst, and then Akida, of course, from the Zwift Royer cycling team, rounding out the top 10, but no riders from Canyon Esports in the mix there. This is an absolutely fascinating tactical game. Let's have a look at how that actually, I think we're going to see that PO Auto Ceramic Speed are going to end up in a very, very strong position, Dave, because this is a really interesting point score. More, not so much on who scored points, but the teams that still haven't scored points. Absolutely fascinating stuff.
I agree. And if you look at it there, that's going to be a nice 7 points with Pedersen and Knudsen on PO Auto Ceramic Speed, which it's going to be very, very close when you look at the top teams out here now based on points. But there it is, 21, so just 1 point better than Beast Mode, presented by Rose. Kirkmeyer E-Racing at 17, 2 points ahead of Callis Esport Racing here, and then BZR Sports Solid. So Kirkmeyer was a community promotion from season 1 to 2. Callis a promotion this season. So BZR Sports Solid a promotion this season. So good to see them stepping up and making a mark here already. So there we have it. The teams that have been committing. You can see 21 points already for PO Auto Ceramic Speed, and that's as good as at the finish line, about a 7th or 8th place.
That certainly is. We're going to have a look at that sprint again. in an action replay. They left it very, very late indeed. There's a few riders that kind of made it hard on the approach up the S's, but this was the moment that they crossed the line. Just see that here, another little camera angle there. Second place, you could just see there for Vidar Mel. And then the rest of the team, a few little gaps, a few little fissures starting to appear, but that means that PO Auto Ceramic Speed, as Dave illustrated there, in a very, very strong position. And remember, there's still another sprint to go, so still another 10 points on offer next time through before we hit the finish, and more points on offer on the finish line as well. Remember, 50 points for the winner, 40 points for second place, then 35, 30, 27, 25, and then from 6th place down to 30th, the points are there are 1 increment points all the way down. So still a lot of points on offer, but there are some teams now, Dave, some of the favoured teams in this league now have got towards the back end of this race, have got a lot of work to do. And I'm just wondering if there is some overarching plan that the teams are kind of happy, I say happy in inverted commas, but they've got a plan that they're kind of sticking to and are really going to try and shake things up a little bit later on. This is really, really fascinating. This hasn't gone, Dave, like the way I expected it. I don't know how I kind of really expected it to go, but I didn't expect some of the biggest teams on the platform not to have scored any points. They've got a lot of work to do. They may actually be gambling here. This is fascinating.
There are a few teams that will be petitioning to see more stages like this, and this is really a great example of the range that we could be seeing in the ZRL. I really think that today will stand out. We're in with the Austrian rider now, Stefan Kirchmeier. Stefan has built up a huge support system around himself and the Kirchmeier sports program there. Most of the riders are German. There's that nice mix of Austrian and German riders on the team, but Stefan should be proud of what this team has been able to do. Is he is sitting right in the sweet spot there, Matt. I really like how this illustrates. We've been talking about draft savings. Well, not going to do too much better than Stefan is now as he settles back in. His team has been participating in the bonus sprints and more than keeping their head above water. So you make an excellent point, Matt, about this storyline today hasn't been so much about the teams that are scoring points, but the teams that haven't. Because if you go back and look at which was a wild and woolly team time trial last week, well, this is, again, polar opposite as we've got Zwan off the front right now. Again, you always wonder what is going on with these attacks, and are they trying to set the table for riders to come up and join, Matt, and make it a real run? Because it's going to take 4 or 5 riders working together at this point. Again, a little over 38K of total racing today. So you can see with about 15.5 kilometers of racing remaining, one solo rider trying to hold off this field. You're like Don Quixote.
It's a big ask, but again, we always say it's kind of almost like a suicide mission. But you know, racing wouldn't be racing. Imagine if riders just wanted to just sit in the bunch and just conserve energy. Of course, that is an important thing to consider, but we do need riders to go on the offensive. And Zwan has got a couple of seconds lead here. Heart rate hovering around 162. He's having to push out, you know, at least 1.5 watts per kilo more than the group behind. I mean, riders can just roll on the front, then roll back, saving lots more energy. That's why the bunch moves so much more, not so much quickly, but it can move quickly when it needs to. The bunch just moves far more efficiently than one solo rider out there who just has to continue working without any rest. But Thibaut Zwan, we know the Dutch racing team finished strongly last year, and of course they had individual wins courtesy of Mako Voits. They're a team that know what they're doing. They really are. But I'm kind of surprised that maybe it is one of those moves where he's expecting some riders to come across, and that does happen in racing. You go clear, expecting to be joined by somebody, and then it doesn't happen, and it's like, what do I do now? I'm kind of committed now, so I've got to keep on riding. So there's one here, putting out, still hovering around 5 watts a kilo, but his lead's gone up 3.3 seconds. This is a solid ride here.
Yeah, you feel lonelier than a stag date at prom when you're out here alone. You know, you really wish you had a date because no one wants to do this alone. I mean, you've got the hammer and tongs out now. Just look at the numbers, right? Zwan has been staying over 5 watts per kilo here, that's an uncomfortable territory to be in, while all the other riders sitting back in that group are ranging, you know, right around 3 to 4 watts per kilo. That is a massive, massive difference. You know, I'm looking at it, Matt. You know, the way the points have been distributed, yeah, I get it. PO out of Ceramic Speed sitting on 21 points, and they've got 3 or 4 teams that are within just a couple points of them. That distribution, however, leaves it wide open for, let's look at a team like Insured presented by Pedal Power. They have 2 riders that could go top 5 today. If they really have their day and time to sprint perfectly, Tom Thrall and Brian Hodges could upset that proverbial apple cart because there's a lot of points there. So, again, if you have gone conservative out here, look how it's stringing out now. This is a big pressure moment, Matt. We're in with Tibor Zwan now. This is what that chase has done. He lit the fuse. I'll give him credit for that. Racers make the race, and Tibor, you certainly played your role, but we are Grupo Compacto. Hal Davies, the Welsh rider, has moved up to the front. There's another Canadian out of Vancouver, British Columbia, Matt Usborne. He's a closer. That man knows how to suffer, no doubt about it. Spencer Segabruch. He's one of the Canyon riders that's now starting to insert themselves into the conversation, Matt. So the cast of characters changing a little bit up on the front. We've got another bonus sprint, and then our final sprint of the race here, where it all will be on the line. Buckle up. Here we go. We're down to 13.3K of racing remaining. This will go by very quickly here.
It certainly will, Dave. As you said, coming up 2 laps done here. This is week 2 of season 3 of the Zwift Racing League. It is all about points. It is a points race. Points make prizes. It is the team that accumulates most of the points out on the road and at the finish that will win. Of course, there is the glory, the individual glory of winning the scratch race on the day. But more importantly, it's accumulating as many points as you can. And we do have 1 lap to go now. Back through the finishing arch. That is their final glance at the finishing arch in this more benign state. Next time through, they'll be thundering across to try and see who takes the win. But riders jostling for position here. Still a few kilometers to go now. The intermediate sprint on this course comes at around 6Ks in. And this is where the road just gently starts to rise as we look at the figure of Matt Osborne there. A bearded Matt Osborne, communicated up, of course, got his headphones stuck in. He's only got 7 ride-ons there. Come on, guys. Get on your Zwift Companion app. Get involved in the conversation and encourage these riders, because believe you me, this last lap is going to be very, very painful indeed. And Matt Osborne just sat on about 4.8 watts a kilo there, making it look relatively easy. And believe you me, not many riders could ride for very long at all at that sort of power. They are motoring along here, Dave. Up the drag now, well into our final lap, and we have another attacker.
One solo rider, and I think it's Howell again. Howell Davies making his mark. Matt Usborne is out on his patio in a high-rise in downtown Vancouver, one of the most modern cities in the world, Matt, a place I'm sure that you would love up there in Canada. Boy, you know, the Canadians have been all over the front of this bike race on various teams out here today. Restart Racing has been strong, no doubt about it, but here we are in with Davies now, and you can see he's starting to open up that gap. This is the 3rd rider that we've seen make this play, as now how over 3 seconds. So he's committed to this, and I have to think again, this is about the bonus points, not the finish of the race. I'm not sure if you're tracking on the same line of thought as I am there, Matt.
Yep, I think he's got to be. I mean, to go this long is bold. I mean, to go this long even for the points, because he's still got around 4 kilometers of solo riding. But maybe he's been buoyed by the 2 attacks. Bird attacked earlier on. And then, of course, we saw Tibor Zwan attack as well. Maybe he's just thought, well, I'm just going to go for it, see what happens. And he's looking good, but we know he's a very, very capable rider indeed. And he, again, he's opened up that lead. I think the biggest lead we've seen tonight is around 5 or 6 seconds, and he's hovering around that point. But to sustain it with so much at stake, Dave, is very, very hard indeed. But he's doing a very, very good job indeed. Davis there, the Welshman, as you said, 350 watts, hovering at around 6 watts per kilo there. This is really going to start to hurt here as he rounds the backside of the volcano. Not too much elevation at all on this course, but it looks as if they're bearing down on him very, very quickly indeed. That gap has been shut down as we enter into the volcano. Looks like we've got some pretty aggressive racing coming up, Dave. The bunch now really starting to thin out.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at this. It's splitting up all over the place. This is that stick of dynamite that we were talking about earlier. Let's take a look. So Matt Usborne, Gumbel, this is going to be Tibor Zwan again getting up in the mix. There's Jaden Yeager, another Canadian there, Luc Gilbeau. This is the first time we've seen a split like this, I would say, in all 3 seasons. We've got 5 riders opening up a 1.5 second gap right now. So that is a lot of points going up the road right here. They're going to weld that back together, Matt. They can't play around with this one here. Let's see if they can shut this down. Boy, left, right, and center. This one is all over the shop. What a thrilling day of racing this one has turned out to be. We're down to 10K of racing left. What dynamics are playing out now? Well, this will be the final bonus sprint that we're coming into here.
Yep, Osborne now on the front, Rees, Van Diemen. As you said, that was a very, very dangerous move. Just using that little bit of elevation as they headed through the center of the volcano. These little rises are few and far between on this course, but it does provide a little bit of an opportunity for riders to attack. But as you said, the teams were straight on it. There was no way they were going to let such a potentially powerful move, Dave, go clear. And there was no hesitation at all. I think it was Beast Mode powered by Rose that were the team that actually brought it back together. And now Ruderham on the front, Osborne, Segelbrook, Steinman, Buehler, De Block, Dan Fleeman now, a rider who knows how to win on this platform, riding for Saris and the Pro Closet. He's not too far away, but only a few Ks to go now until the all-important intermediate sprint, which comes with only around 7 or 8 Ks to go.
That's Gianni Kuhlman moving up to the front. You've got to get the timing right. This is as tricky as it gets where you're in a group of gladiators like we've got here in the ZRL. That's going to be Ryan Rutterham that we're looking at now in the red as he opens up nearly a 2-second advantage. It's going to be Daniel Turek and Dan Fleeman leading the chase. Then Luc Gilbeau and Matt Usborne, they're back in the front of the vanguard of the chase. All right, this is another big effort. I am really impressed with how active it has been on the front. These guys are not waiting for the race to come to them, Matt. These guys are all over this one as we're looking at now, again, Ryan Rutterham in the red of draft. They certainly deserve a tip of the hat for being very, very aggressive today.
This is what it's all about, Dave. This is what's making the other teams have to chase a little bit. It's a dangerous move. Bruce Bird went earlier on, spent around 3.5 kilometers off the front. But what you do when you race like this, you can actually provide the catalyst because it looks like there's a rider coming across the gap. It is Tibor Zwan and Huel Davis. So it's Zwan, so Rotherham is now leading for Canada and, of course, Team Draft. Tibor Zwan of the Dutch racing team is now punting himself across this gap. This is fascinating racing. It really, really is. The gaps are still very, very slender. 8 kilometers to go, but only a couple of Ks to that sprint. This is that nasty little series of S's on this gravel sector here. This is where the road starts to kick up just a little bit. It's flat now, but then the road starts to rise. But this is a great bit of riding by the Canadian, and it looks as if Zwan is going to try and get across on this gap. Zwan is absolutely on fire. Look at the stats of Rodham here, Dave. 7 watts a kilo. Can he hold on? It's a big ask.
It certainly is, but Zwan looks like he's channeling, well, he was channeling his inner Cancellara, but now you can see the force of the peloton as they roll through, make the catch. They've got Rutterham in their sights right now, and it looks like they're going to reel this one back in through this challenging sector here. So we'll basically hit the reset, but this race is absolute pandemonium coming into the last 7.5 K. It is in no way a guarantee that we're going to see a bunch gallop out here, Matt.
No, it isn't. We've got Kershaw there, the Brit riding for the Mobistar team, just drifting on the front. He's got Harner with him as well. This is the final sprint, or the penultimate sprint of the night. This is the final intermediate sprint coming up in Kershaw and Harner have just eked themselves off the front. This is the start of this sprint. It's actually measured over 400 meters. The riders will know it like the back of their hand, and they are starting to open things up. Kershaw is there, Osborne, Kirkmare. He featured earlier on. Pim Van Diemen is also there. It looks like it's Kirkmare who's well in front as they round the corner here. Well, a stunning turn of speed by the German, but has he gone too early? I think he has. It looks like it's Warner who might have got that just on the line. Zach Warner looked like he took that. We get confirmation. We look at the stats of Takada Ikeda. Well, An absolutely spectacular sprint, and look at the gaps that are starting to open. There's a few riders here, Dave, that are really on the limit. There is confirmation it was Warner from De Brock. Kirkmaier, well, he held on for third place. Mike Cumming there for Saris in the pros closet in fourth. Aikida for Swift Warriors there in fifth. Then Van Ruth. Vujasan, the first time we've seen Canyon Esports score points on these intermediate sprints. Knudsen, Lee and Van Diemen rounding out the top 10. What a fascinating sprint that was, Dave.
I think the big hitters took that one off, Matt, to tell you the truth. Outside of Vujasan, I think the guys that are looking to pick up the 50 points and take the maximum points at the finish must have decided, because this sprint comes up pretty quickly. They're about 6K from the finish line right now. So that's pretty quick to reload after that one, because that was brutal. These guys are digging incredibly deep out here, and it is going to be the Canadian Matt Usborne attacking again. This man has been relentless out here today. This is turned into an absolute slugfest as we go into the final few minutes of racing. Let's take a look on top of the table now. It's Kirkmaier, Matt. They go 1 point over the top of PO Auto Ceramic Speed after we score the third and final bonus sprint. All right. One last sprint, and it's the big one, the granddaddy out here after 38K. This one will be done and dusted. There are a lot of teams in the hunt looking for the top points on the day, but let's take a look at the replay, Matt.
Yep, this replay here, just see another little cheeky camera angle there, just showing that sprint all across the road. It opened up very early on, but that was a superb win there by Finesse Esports. Great riding there by Osborne. And it is, well, Osborne is now clear. He's got a 4-second lead there. Turek is in second. Vujasan now doing a little bit of chasing here. This is a fascinating move. Osborne, we know, is a classy rider, but has he got the strength? 5Ks to go now. He's got a lead of 4.5 seconds. This is a bold move, and this has been such a thrilling race today, Dave. We thought it might be a far more tactical affair. Teams that we didn't expect to score quite as much have done so, but Osborne, is the bunch behind who are bearing down on him. He's got a 5-second gap, but they've got him on this flat section heading towards the fishing village. They've got him in their sights, but look at the pain writ large on the face of the Canadian. This is do or die stuff.
Yeah, this really speaks to Finesse Esports as well. This team has a lot of depth and tremendous morale. The team of Timmy Bauer, Hayden Warner, who's been very active out here today. And we still haven't talked about Shell Power, the Belgian rider on this squad that could factor in the finale. Let's see if Finesse can find the top 5 on the day out here. Matt Usborne is certainly playing his role out here. And look at this gap. It's continuing to grow. Okay, as we hit 4K, I realize that still we're in long shot range here, but you gotta love the heart that we are seeing here. So Finesse and Draft, they've been the two teams today that have punched above their weight. That's noteworthy as we're ready to start bringing this one home. The horses can smell the barn back in the peloton. The sprinters are going to start looking at positioning. And this is where, Matt, this is the OSS situation. Only the strong will survive this finale today.
Well, Dave, it is. He's got 9.7 seconds. That's the biggest lead of the night so far. Matt Osborne of Canada leading, driving as hard as he can, sticking out nearly 7 watts a kilo. Still a long way to go. 3.5 watts a kilo. We drop down into the ocean tubes for about 2Ks. Then we emerge back into the sunshine before we swing right into Watopia. But the gap is still holding steady. 12 seconds. Dave, this is an astonishing ride. What is happening behind? It seems as if there's almost like a bit of a standoff behind. Nobody, Dave, is willing to take it up. Could Matt Osborne be doing something super special here? 12 seconds is the gap.
This will go down as the greatest individual ride in the ZRL if he can hold on. All right, folks, buckle up, Buttercups. This is going to be unbelievable. Matt, they were fanned out across the road. They're playing with fire. The gap has now gone up to 14 seconds. If he brings this with 14 seconds down to 2K, we have a very interesting conversation. Then it's going to come down to how badly can the Canadian hurt himself here. This is an exceptional individual ride. They say that fortune favors the brave. Well, that's Matt right now. 14 seconds, and there's not an organized chase right now, Matt. They are playing with fire here. They're about to watch a grass fire turn into a structure fire.
Well, he's just stolen another second. The gap is now up to 15 seconds as he still holds on to his holding on at 170 BPM. But is the chase starting to begin now? Dan Fleeman has now moved on to the front for Saris and the pros closet in an effort to try and bring this gap down. We haven't seen a gap this big for a long time. Another second now, 16 seconds for the Canadian, who is flying down underneath through the ocean tubes. He's got 2.2 Ks to go. That's around under 3 minutes of effort, but can he sustain it? But 16 seconds is the gap now. This is an astonishing performance by the Canadian, and it's Thomas Thrall who picks up the chase behind.
When this move started, it had a 1 in a million chance. About a minute ago, it went to 50-50. In my mind, this is absolutely unbelievable. This is why we race bikes, ladies and gentlemen. This is what it is all about. A solo move. It's still at 16 seconds. They have not, there they go. All right, they have lit the fuse. The chase is now coming full gas. Joe Reese, the Welsh rider, has hit the front at 12 watts per kilo. This right here, right now on the ZRL is what we have been waiting for. Can he hold on? He's down to 1.5K to go. No one on planet Earth is suffering, digging deeper than Matt Usborne, the Canadian out of Vancouver, British Columbia, riding his brains out right now. This is what we've been waiting for, Matt.
Well, downtown Watopia beckons. He's back out into the sunshine. He knows what he's got to do. He's still got a decent gap on the rider's spot, but his gap is coming down. But it is Joe Reese, as you said, the Welshman who is chasing in the gap. But the gap is now coming down to the peloton behind. 14 seconds, 15 seconds. Reese is still double digits behind.
It might be too late.
This is an amazing performance. He's only got 1 kilometer to go. I think he's going to pull something absolutely spectacular off here, Dave.
All right, folks, right now, Matt Usborne is holding on to a 9-second advantage on one solo rider, Joe Reese out of Wales. Then it's one of the top sprinters, the Belgian Gianni Koosman, who's sitting on the front of the chase. So it's all hands on deck as far as this chase. He's down to 675 meters. He's going to make it. He is going to do it, Matt. I now believe, and you've got to think, that this is the greatest ride that we have seen in the history of the ZRL. He's down to 1/2 K to go. This is within striking distance. Matt Usborne, you are my hero.
This is an astonishing performance by the Canadian from Finesse Esports. Osborne is just going to have the finishing straight. Is going to come in. Is in sight now. 7 seconds is the gap. It's going to be enough, but there's a big. Jones is closing. Ollie Jones from Canyon Esports bearing down on the Canadian. The finish line is in sight. It looks like Jones overtakes. Heartbreak for the Canadian, and Jones takes the win. Absolutely sensational racing here on round 2. All the results, of course, are provisional, but that was something sensational. You have witnessed one of the most exciting races ever on the Zwift platform. That was round 2 of season 3. That, Dave Towell, was special.
He held on for a top 10 spot in 9th place for Matt Usborne. But Matt, you won a lot of fans today. That is how you canuck up Ollie Jones for the win. So the New Zealander gets that one. Vidar Mel steps up for 2nd place. Anders Fuldogger, the Danish rider, in 3rd. Lionel Viassen for 4th. Michael Voets, a previous winner in the ZRL, the Dutchman, for 5th. You can see Austrian Stefan Kirkmeyer in 6th. Nicholas Pedersen, another Dutch rider, in 7th. Thomas Thrall in 8th, as he's the Canadian just in front of Matt Usborne, one of the heroes of the day. And then Ryan Larson rounding out our top 10. How do you like them apples? Wow.
Well, Dave, I mean, that was an astonishing effort. I mean, we had one of the most aggressive races I think we've seen in men's racing for a long, long time. A lot of individual riders willing to take, well, the bull by the horns. But Matt Osborne, it looked as if it was going to be plain sailing to the line, but it wasn't. Ollie Jones timed his sprint to perfection. And also, look at that. The ever experienced Weirstand there in 4th. It's going to be interesting. The points total it on the night. So this is Ollie Jones in his pain cave. He's gone very, very deep indeed. I mean, this sport of ours is such a beautiful sport, Dave, but it can be so cruel, but so spectacularly exciting at the same time. But it's all about timing your effort. And this man, Ollie Jones, well, he did that to perfection. I mean, who would have thought with 500 meters to go, this man would emerge the winner, but he has.
Yeah, he turned himself into a wattage cottage. There's no doubt when you talk about Ollie. Matt, do we call that a sprint finish? Because that was without a doubt the most fantastic finish that I've seen. Ultimately, it was won in a sprint, but that was a catch of a solo break with a sprint right behind it, literally a millionth of a second behind it. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we've been hoping you would enjoy on ZRL. Today's, I still have goosebumps. I guess you call it chicken skin, whatever it is. I'm affected by that race, no doubt. And I see a lot of folks online chiming in as well. To all the racers out there, Matt and Hannah, I know you both share this sentiment. Thank you for the show. We are entertained.
That was a wonderful race. I think a lot of teams held back a little bit in terms of just keeping, it's a bit of a cliche, but they certainly, well, Canyon Esports in particular, certainly kept their powder dry. They were almost noticeable by their absence early stages of the race, but certainly licked things up at the end. Let's have a little look at the action replay, Dave, because I think this is going to be replayed on many, many occasions. Heartbreak for Osborne, but joy for Ollie Jones of Canyon Esports. This was the moment. He had acres of tarmac, didn't he? He almost had a whole straight on these gentle curves heading into downtown Watopia. It looks as if we were set fair for, well, the kind of moment, the moment for Finesse Esports. And still at this point, Dave, it looks like he's home and dry. But just talk us through the last few hundred meters, because something spectacular happened right about now.
Yeah, he's dying 1,000 deaths inside. It's, as you said, it's bike racing at its best. This is Ollie just finding another level, just a motivated finale. He makes the catch and then just drives this nail home. He makes that catch at 65 meters to go. And if the race was another 10 meters long, so that's the smallest window that you could find. He makes the catch, Matt, at 50 meters to go, and he gets caught by the sprint 5 meters after the line. That is unbelievable to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, amazing. You can just see Jones. It looks as if, well, he had it clear by a couple of lengths, and then poor old Osborne managed to hold on.